Good evening and welcome to the January 8th, 2024 City Council meeting. I am Mayor Ross, and tonight's Council meeting is being brought to you live using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. And tonight's recording will be posted on the city's YouTube channel. Welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us. City Clerk Dean, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Benson.
Here.
Councilmember Watton.
Here.
Holloway.
Here.
Councilmember Washington.
Here.
Councilmember Cotton. Here. Councilmember Christensen. Here. Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Mayor Ross.
Thank you. I'm here. Thank you, City Clerk Dean. Everyone is accounted for. Please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And Councilor Watton, would you please lead it?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We now move to our first item of the regular business is to approve the agenda. Council, may I have a motion to approve
So move.
the agenda?
Second.
It was moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway and second by Councilmember Cotton. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And the agenda passes. It is approved. Next item of business is AB 24-012, 2024 Mayor Pro Tem election. So at the first meeting of a new council or periodically the members thereof by majority vote shall designate one of their number as Mayor Pro Tem for such a period as the council may specify to serve in the absence or temporary disability of the mayor. Council, does anyone wish to nominate a council member to serve as a Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This is Louis Washington.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Washington, yes.
Yes, I nominate Councilmember Brian Holloway.
Second.
Okay, so Councilmember Holloway, do you accept the nomination?
I accept the nomination.
So Councilmember Holloway is nominated. Are there any further nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? Okay. Any further nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? Any further nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? Seeing none. Council, there's no further nominations. With no objections, I will close nominations and they are now closed. Council agrees. Let's provide the opportunity for our candidate to provide a statement as to why he is interested in Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm gonna forego that tonight, if you don't mind. Tell you the truth, guys, I want to get through these. I've got family matters I need to take care of tonight. Okay, so that's gonna take priority very shortly for me. So 20 years experience, you had me Mayor Pro Tem last year. If you vote me in, I'll do the best I can.
Thank you. Any discussion, Council?
That was a more stirring speech than last time.
Right, thank you. Okay.
The game's going to be over.
Councilor Benson.
That's not what
Okay, so let's move to a vote. Council Member Holloway is nominated. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? So it is unanimous and Councilor Holloway is our new Mayor Pro Tem for the second year. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Right. Next item of business is AB 24-013, 2024 Council Committee Liaison and Regional Appointments. Councilor Holloway, are you ready to make appointments? Would you prefer to
No,
move this to
I'm
January
ready to have a
2022?
discussion. I do have a proposal for discussion. Apologize for not having digitally. I felt it a bit bad etiquette to do it until after the Mayor Pro Tem discussion. I do, pass this. So what I'm proposing for this year is for F&A as Mayor Pro Tem. I'll be the chair of that. Members of that will be Kara Johnson, And Joe,
What?
Kara Christensen, sorry. And Joe Johnson, forgive me, my brain is not fully here. Okay, and then in community development, Rob Watton will be a member of community development. Lewis Washington will be the chair, and Joe Johnson will be a member also. For Parks and Public Works, Ethan will remain as chair in that position. I will remain as a member, as well as Kat Cotton, we would like you to be a member of that committee also. And then Public Safety, Rob Watton would be chair. Kat Cotton would be a member, and Kara Johnson will also be a member.
Nope.
Christensen.
Did I?
Close enough.
Please correct me. But you know the intent. I did try to balance out. If you got a chairmanship, that was kind of like 2 points. Membership was 1 point. F&A, if you're on the F&A, it was like 1.5 points. And tried to balance and spread it evenly across, as well as you'll notice that the F&A committee has membership that hits all the other committees. Okay, so we're not in F&A approving the council agenda, wondering what happened in XYZ committee. We've got somebody there who was there. So that's my proposal for the year coming forward. Entertain any discussions or questions in regards.
Yes, Councilman Holloway, this is Councilmember Washington.
Councilmember Washington,
Sorry. First time I'm online as a council member. The liaison assignments, what are your thoughts there?
I will bring those in the next council meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
I want to have another set of conversation, who wants what, is interested in what before I do those. So one thing at a time.
Perfect. Makes sense to me.
so this is official motion.
Yes, that is the motion with the spelling corrections. That is the motion of assignments for this year.
Second.
So it's moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway and second by Councilmember Johnson. The council committee appointments. Council, any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, the council committee motion has passed, and we will put on our agenda for next time the council liaison positions.
And Chair, I request to be excused for the rest of the meeting. I have a family member is not expected to make it through the night, so I'm gonna go be with family. If you don't forgive me.
We're sorry
Thank
about that. We'll excuse you.
Do we
Councilmember
need
Johnson.
to excuse for this meeting? I mean, if so moved.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair says. Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Holloway is excused. Councilmember Washington?
Yes, Madam Mayor, likewise, I'd ask for the same. I'm actually away in Colorado on business, and I would need to be excused for the rest of the evening.
Oh, leaving at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilor, is there? There's second?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right, thank you, Councilmember Washington. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Is excused.
Mayor, I didn't have any dinner, so
I'm not feeling it. Actually,
Johnson?
just to be clear, we need 4, correct? To
That is
conduct
correct.
business. Yeah.
Yes, so we have more than a quorum, so that's good. Okay, next item of business this evening is AB 24-011, appointments and reappointments to the Economic Development Commission. Purpose of this agenda is to appoint Paula Shively and Sabby Shunkalon and reappoint Joelle Gibson to the Economic Development Commission. So Paula Shively, she's lived in the city for 8.5 years and is the Assistant Facilities Director for Snow King Ice Arenas. She has extensive business operations experience and is involved in a variety of activities within Snoqualmie community. She will fill position number 6, replacing outgoing Commissioner Larry Manano, also from Snow King Ice Arenas, whose term expired in December. And Sabi is the Vice President in Operations of Supply Chain at Space Labs. He will fill position number 1, replacing outgoing Commissioner Shabla Chandra, also from Space Labs, who resigned in December. And Joelle Gibson is the owner of Carousel Gift Shop. Her term expired in December and she'd like to continue to serve. So, Councilor, I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Then moved by Councilor Christensen and second by Councilor Watton. Councilor, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And if we have any of the new appointees on hand, if you'd like to say a few words. I see Joelle's online and Paula. Would you either like to say a few words or if not, just thank you for volunteering. Oh, we do see, who's that? Joelle. I don't know where she went. Oh, there she is. Okay. Joelle? There she is. Joelle, did you want to say a few words?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't a panelist, so sorry for that. Just, yeah, thank you, Mary Ross, and I look forward to just continuing to serve on the commission this year and working with fellow commissioners.
Excellent. Thank you, Joelle. Thanks for agreeing to serve again. So thank you. All right. Okay, moving on. Council, the final item of business under appointments, presentations, proclamations is a proclamation of mentoring. So every January, the mentoring movement unites in celebration of National Mentoring Month and uses the power of its collective voice to recruit new members, advance the mentoring field's legislative priorities, and drive a meaningful change for young people. And I will read a portion of the proclamation, and you can find the remainder of it online. Excuse me. Use my voice. So whereas January 2024 will mark the 22nd anniversary of National Mentoring Month, an annual campaign to focus attention on the need for members, as well as how each of us can work together to increase the number of mentorships to help ensure positive outcomes for our young people. And whereas mentoring programs like the Youth Success Mentoring, a program of Empower Youth Network, makes our communities and our state stronger by driving impactful relationships that increase social capital for young people and provide invaluable support networks. And whereas mentoring plays a pivotal role in career exploration and supports workplace skills by helping young people set career goals, equipping mentors with the skills needed to support the professional growth of young people, and drives positive outcomes for young people and businesses. And whereas quality mentoring promotes healthy relationships and communications, positive self-esteem, emotional well-being, and growth of a young person and their relationship with other adults. And whereas National Mentoring Month is a time of year to celebrate, elevate, and encourage mentoring across our state and recruit caring adult mentors in the city of Snoqualmie. So I, Catherine Ross, Mayor of the City of Snoqualmie and Snoqualmie City Council, do hereby proclaim January 2024 as National Mentoring Month in the city. So I believe we do have joining us tonight, Jan Formasano. There she is. Would you like to say a few words? Yes, great.
Good evening. My name is Jan Formasano, and I'm a retired educator from here in the Valley, and I'm representing the Youth Success Mentoring tonight. I wanted to express my thanks for your support, but in the words of a student. So I mentor 3 students this year. This is my 2nd year with them. I have a 4th grader, a 6th grader, and a 7th grader. And I asked the fourth grader last week, so what do you think, do you like this mentoring program? And she said, oh, I love it. And I said, well, what do you get out of it? And what do you think I get out of it? And she was really puzzled because I don't think she really thought about, well, what does my mentor get out of it? I don't think she gets anything out of it, but she thought for a minute and then she said, well, I get someone who shows a positive mindset and always makes me feel really good about myself. And she said, and I think you get to see my happiness and my smiles. So that really touched my heart. And then she said, so how long do you get to be my mentor? And I said, oh, well, probably till you graduate from high school. And she said, really? That's so cool. So I'd love for you all to join the cool club and come join us as a mentor. I have 30 to 45 minutes a week with these 3 students, and it's probably the highlight of my week each time. So spread the word. We need lots of mentors. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. And we'll take a picture.
Okay.
Yes. And then nobody would have to get up. Makes total sense. Especially with their skills. I'm just glad I'm way over here. I never have to get here.
Just start taking the pictures over
that
that
way
way now.
Too much calisthenics on that side.
Okay, next time, at this next thing, we will provide time for residents to comment on items that are not on the agenda. So first, a few ground rules. Snoqualmie residents who are not present have the right to have their elected representatives perform their duties on behalf of the city in an efficient, orderly manner. So comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Please wait to be recognized and state your name and city of residence for the record. Direct your comments to the council and as a whole and not to individual members. Please note that this is not a time to ask questions of the council, mayor, or staff, or to engage in debate. And public comments during this portion of the meeting shall be limited to topics concerning current, future, or requested city projects, actions, programs, plans, and regulations. Comments not pertaining to these subject matters are not germane and may result in your comments being suspended. At last, please respect the decorum of these proceedings as well as all due respect will be afforded to you. So again, this are items now that are not on the agenda, and you'll have 3 minutes. So if you would like to have public comment, please raise your hand. Okay.
Mayor, just a point where I just want to make sure that we're good on cutting public comments. Not that I want to keep hearing, I just want to make sure that's okay legally.
Actually, what I read in,
Sorry, I
What?
just want to make sure that we're okay.
yes.
Point of order.
Thank you.
Could
Okay,
we
your point.
include comments on the Zoom link that are public saying that some sort of disclaimer that a portion was disallowed?
On the video or on the,
Are you talking
On
about
the website and other places
when
Oh.
where it's posted.
the recording?
So your city clerk's preparing meeting minutes. She can make a note in the meeting minutes that the commenters' comments violated the rules set forth for germaneness to council business and just have it reflect that.
Thank you.
so I did read in that it had to be germane to current, future requested city projects, actions, programs, plans, and regulations.
Perfect.
It's
Thank you.
very, it was very clear that anything outside of that,
And you did
Is-
mention decorum too.
I did mention decorum.
Thank you, Mayor.
So, yes.
What happens to the the
Can-
Zoom presentation, excuse me.
Councilman
Mayor.
Patton?
I mean, when this is posted on YouTube, as far as the Zoom meeting recording, what will be allowed on that?
So I guess I'm not familiar with how the council's meeting minutes are usually they are brought or they are linked to the,
They're public, yeah.
we'll have to think about that and we'll let you know how that's going to be handled.
Okay.
Councilor Benson?
I was just gonna say that I actually appreciate people who are complete psychos putting a sign on and letting us all know that they're psychos and that we don't need to care about what they think. My only question is about the veracity of this guy's name. You know, obviously he's hiding behind a blank screen to hide his identity. So,
Okay.
hey, it's a big wide country and there's a lot of idiots out there.
Councilor Christensen?
I would just recommend maybe that if we were going to discuss this more, that maybe we would want to take a minute and consult with our counsel before talking about it too much more on the record, especially as we're talking about it.
Yeah,
Councilor
actually,
Johnson.
move for executive session. I'm sure there's got to be something that we could justify it for to discuss it with you real
We can certainly
real
talk
quick.
About it, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We could do a 4230.110 1I discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So moved
Second.
if we needed.
I think actually.
So how long?
Anyway, whatever.
Move to executive session and how long?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. 10 minutes. So we will come back in.
Hold on, do we have a discussion on that motion or is it just an automatic? It's an automatic?
I don't think so.
No, you vote if you want to go into executive session. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'd rather not spend another minute on this joker.
Councilor Johnson?
I have some things that I want to talk to our legal counsel about personally.
All right.
But I completely respect your opinion and I wish I could go there. I just have questions.
Is it something,
Councilor
excuse me, Mayor? Thank you. Is it something we could do at the end? Like move on to the next agenda?
We have,
items?
we are going to have more public comment this evening still, so we,
Maybe prudent time.
any
okay.
further issues, we need to address it. Councilor Button?
My preference is to go into executive session so that we can have a reset.
All right, call the question.
So if you call the question, then we
That
have
needs
to
a
vote to call the question.
Does that need a second to call?
I don't think so.
Was there a second? Hang on. Nope, no second. Okay. Call the question. So all in favor of going to a vote, say aye.
Aye.
All of this not in favor, say nay. Did everyone say aye? Okay, so we are going to go ahead and vote on going to executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? All right. So how about we will go into executive session for 10 minutes. It is now 7:26. We'll come back about 7:36. Okay, 7:39, and we have returned from our executive session. So the city of Snoqualmie is an inclusive community that welcomes everyone and embraces compassion, tolerance, religious freedom, and peace. We unequivocally condemn hate, violence, and terror. While we support the public's First Amendment rights to free speech, respect diverse opinions, we must forcefully condemn the heinous, hateful comments made here this evening and any other types of comments similar. The city stands firm in its commitment to being welcoming to those from all walks of life. We invite all of our residents and community members to join us in taking a strong stand, excuse me, against hate and discrimination. Okay. With that, we'll continue public comment. And again, public comments during this portion of the meeting shall be limited to topics concerning current, future, or requested city projects, actions, programs, plans, and regulations. Comments not pertaining to these subject matters are not germane and may result in your comments being suspended. And we please respect the decorum of these proceedings, as all respect would be afforded to you. So I see someone else online. Chris G, did you have any public comment? You allotted 3 minutes. Chris G. Okay, Chris G is not responding. I think we have completed public comment online. Anyone in the chambers wish to have public comment that are items not on the agenda?
Remember, we can see your face. Okay.
So public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay. State your name and city.
Okay. Kelly Coughlin, the CEO of the Snow Valley Chamber. And I just want to say a couple things. Thank you guys for having this special meeting that you had on Thursday night. I was there and I wanted to just have a couple of comments that I wanted to say about B&O. I stand here today to express a heartfelt request on behalf of our local businesses and the entire community. In the face of ongoing challenges, we urge you to consider not raising the B&O taxes on our businesses. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought unprecedented challenges to our community and our businesses. Even as we emerge from the crisis, many of our local businesses continue to grapple with the economic repercussions of the past few years. The B&O tax based on gross receipts poses a significant financial burden on our already struggling businesses. It's important to recognize that our businesses owners have shown remarkable resilience throughout these trying times. Many of them have been forced to make difficult decisions, including foregoing their paychecks in order to keep their businesses afloat. They absorbed soaring costs, particularly in the food industry and retail, have faced the added challenges of complying with the new minimum wage requirements imposed by the state. Raising the B&O taxes at this juncture would only add to the burden of our local businesses that are already shouldering. It threatens to impede their ability to recover, grow, and contribute to our community's well-being. Our businesses are the lifeblood of Snoqualmie, providing employment opportunities, essential services, and contributing to the vibrant tapestry of our city. We understand that the city has its own financial responsibilities and that this decision to raise taxes is often not taken lightly. However, we implore you to consider broader implications of such a decision. An increase in B&O tax may deter new businesses from establishing themselves in Snoqualmie. Instead of imposing additional financial burdens on our businesses, we propose exploring alternative ways to support them during these challenges times. In closing, I would really urge that the Snoqualmie City Council to prioritize the well-being of our local businesses and community as a whole. Let us work together to find some solutions that foster growth, economic stability, and resilience for our beloved city. Please reconsider any plans to raise the B&O taxes on our businesses and let us continue to support and strengthen the backbone of our community. And I just wanted to stress to you, I didn't do my due diligence and I spoke to many of our businesses and especially our restaurants. Many of them are struggling. Any additional funds right now is very struggling. And I remind you on the B&O tax, it is the gross receipts. It is not what they make. And so I just want to implore that you guys, at least for the next 2 years, just gives them this opportunity to come back they're still coming back from COVID. So I just wanted to repeat that. So thank you for considering.
Great. Thank you. Any other public comment?
So it's Catherine Podschwit, 7951 Maple, here as a resident and a local business owner. First of all, I want to thank the council and administration for your words about inclusiveness and compassion in this community. I appreciate that in light of today's craziness. And I also want to talk about the B&O and other tax increase ideas that were brought up on the meeting on Thursday. Mostly, I just wanted to talk about kind of like how you guys are kind of in the seat of a business owner right now, talking about the sales tax could be likened to our profit margin in business. So like a full service restaurant is a 3 to 5% profit margin, fast casual 5 to 9, bars 10 to 15. And then retail as a whole average is at 7.71%. And that's about what you guys, if you were to do the sales tax increases, would be taking here. So our income is your income in that space. And like Kelly was just talking about, there are a lot of people really struggling right now. And I think a B&O, it was the lowest percentage on, like the lowest amount of the ideas that were brought forth. And I think it would be more beneficial to focus on a sales tax because that has the most potential to keep increasing if we work together as a business community and a city and focus on the tourism and wayfinding and things that we know can drive more people downtown to our small businesses and on the ridge. And I would love to be a partner with that. And I know the downtown merchants would also love to be a partner in that. And I think we can kind of float all boats in that capacity. So thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we move on to.
You got one more.
Oh.
Do I need to introduce myself?
Yes.
Okay.
name and-
Carson
yeah,
Mathis. I live here in Snoqualmie. I just want to say it sucks that you guys have to do, and I am really glad I'm not sitting in your seat right now. I just want to start off by saying thank you, Councilmember Benson, for the comments that you had at our special council meeting we had last Thursday. The very level-headed approach you had when you talked about how the difference that we saw in the little chart thing that they used to describe, to show what the projected revenues would be if we had all 5 of the options utilized, and that the spending would match the revenues coming in. It's the right approach to take on it. I want to say thank you for that. What I will say, and this kind of goes along with what Councilmember Johnson was saying regarding that we have 5 options here on, or 5 presented options here right now, while there are others that haven't been discussed yet. The reality is that a half-hearted approach is not going to actually solve the problem that we're looking at as far as the budget. So it is going to be something where no one's going to be happy with the outcome one way or the other. We all understand that. We all appreciate it. You're not in a fun position here. That being said, as someone who cares really, really deeply about the citizens of this community, I feel that it should be a point that the cost that we're going to have for maintaining the levels of service that we have is a cost that we should look to spread that burden on outside of the valley as much as possible. So I agree that the marginal increase in sales tax to cover the gap, in my opinion, is probably one of the best options you have. I firmly disagree with the, what was it, lid lock? Whatever that
Levy
one
lid.
thing was. I think it's a bad idea. B&O tax is a bad idea. You guys have a situation that no one's gonna be happy with. What I would recommend here is for you to really, really closely look at the value that ordinance 1171 really provides to this community. And I want you to really critically evaluate if the hopeful Mayberry aesthetic that you're hoping to preserve is really worth the budget detriment that it's costing. So I'm not going to bring it up more, just that right there, but I think it's something that you all should really, really consider is what is 1171 doing? Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Next item is the consent agenda. It contains approval of the city council meeting minutes dated December 11th, 2023 and January 4th, 2024. And the claims approval report dated January 8th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Moved by Councilmember Johnson, second by Councilmember Christensen. To approve the consent agenda, is there public comment regarding this item? If so, public comment must be related to the topics on consent agenda and limited to 2 minutes. If so, please raise your hand. Okay. Seeing no one online or in the public in City Hall raising their hands. Counselor, is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? So the consent agenda is approved. Excuse me. Next item is AB 24-002 biennial budget amendment to appropriate for the collective bargaining agreement with Teamsters. This is the first reading of ordinance 1286. And who will fill in for Mayor Pro Tem Holloway to read the summary? Councilor Christensen, you want to read this summary? Since you are now on F&A.
If it's up there. Are you looking at just the introduction?
Yes.
The purpose of this ordinance is to amend the 2023 to 2024 biennial budget to provide the city with the appropriation necessary to cover the Teamsters collective bargaining agreement as provided for in AB 23-143.
Thank you. Is there any public comment regarding this item? If so, comments must be related to AB 24-002 and limit your comments to 2 minutes. So check online. No one no one online and no one in City Hall. Okay. Council, we have any discussion? So we do have our Finance Director, Drew Boutte, and Budget Manager, Janet Walker, who could provide an overview. Like to see the overview, please?
Yeah, please.
Good evening, council. My name is Jana Walker. I'm Budget Manager. Share my screen here. Before I jump into the amendment itself, I just wanted to go over internal service charges within the city because that's a key component of this amendment. Within our city, we have funds that operate with each other like separate businesses. So in a retail transaction, a retail entity provides services associated with a purchase and a customer pays for a purchase price plus the service charge. So money's exchanging hands. One customer pays the exact same amount that the retail entity receives, at least in gross. And then for an internal service charge, we have serving funds within our community, such as facilities, fleet, finance, IT, and they serve the other entities like police and fire, streets, parks, utilities, capital funds. The internal service fund provides services associated with the needs and purchases that may be servicing a car or purchasing a car, fuel, things like that. And in return, the receiving fund, who is essentially a customer of that internal service fund, pays a service charge or a purchase price. So as how this relates to the current amendment for the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, we need an additional $537,000 to pay for the Teamsters salaries for 2023 and 2024. However, some of those employee costs are within IT and within fleet, within finance. So those need to be allocated once again. When we made our budget, we estimated how much we would have to use as internal service charges. But because of the CBA, those costs are higher than we estimated, so we need to adjust those costs upward. The customer, like the police or streets or utilities, needs to pay a little bit more to the retail entity, which is, in this case, fleet, IT, finance, and facilities. So you will see that 537,000 being paid out to Teamsters. That's something that we need the amendment for. And then you'll also see an additional amendment that will allow us to pay those internal service costs. And it's a net zero to the city because one fund is receiving revenue and another fund is receiving or paying the exact same amount in expense. So in this case, so the first part of the amendment is the 537,000 for the Teamsters. The second part is the 201,000 service charge, where we're reallocating money so that utilities is properly paying for the amount of computers that they're using or support for cars and vehicles and things like that. And this is how it works out. You can see at the bottom, the amendment that you're approving is 738,000 approximately. You can see that in the expenditure. We are requesting a budget amendment of that amount. It's also matched by $201,000 in revenue to certain funds. And so the net effect on the fund is the exact amount that we saw initially in that agenda bill of $537,000.
Council, you have any questions? Councilor Watton.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't excel well in fuzzy math and a little help digesting this because it seems like, is it really 738 or is it 537? And maybe you mentioned it, and that's the part where my brain is fuzzy.
Money out the door, the increase in appropriation is the 537,000, at least increase in budgetary appropriation. But the accounting portion of this amendment is saying, well, now that it costs more to run the vehicle fleet, we need to charge more to whoever's using that fleet. So we have to increase the appropriation to account for that as well.
Councilor Johnson.
So the first question I hope is just, I'm misunderstanding part of this at a very fundamental level, because when I look at the budget impacts, it says okay, I'll just read it. The 2023-2024 biennial budget ordinance, as provided for in this agenda bill, authorizes the city of Snoqualmie to spend or transfer amounts no more than 79 million some odd, 88 million some odd in 2024 for a total of 168 million across all funds and functional classifications. When I read that, which I realize is not part of the actual bill itself, that's part of the description. I'm like, this doesn't say that just here's a blank check, go and spend it, does it?
No, we have very specific amounts that we can spend in each fund.
Right. That's what I thought. It's just when I read that, it made it read like we're just saying, okay, well, here's all the money, go spend it. I want to make sure
No.
that that's not what this says.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. So what this says is that amends, the last amendment that we processed was 77 odd million, less 537 or 738,000. So we're just increasing over our last amendment, the step up of the amount that I'm displaying up there on the screen. 738,000 is the increase.
Okay. I was hoping that was a silly question. Glad to hear it was. Now, the other part is I see that we have the 200 in quote unquote revenue. That's the internal service charges, right? So that's not money actually coming from somewhere else in.
Correct.
Excuse me. But the net effect on the fund is still 500,000. So the 200,000 doesn't cover that. So is that coming from fund balance or somewhere else? The 500.
So yes, we are relying on fund balance. There's no additional revenue outside of the city to cover this. The CBA, as we discussed, that's partially why we're having this big revenue discussion. Because there's no pot of money that we have to just cover this. So we need to relook at our revenue and see how it matches in this time of inflation.
That's a lot.
That is a huge chunk.
Sorry. Follow up.
Well, actually, so Councilor Christensen, you had your hand up.
Feel
before.
free.
I'll go ahead and hold for now.
Councilor Johnson?
Okay, and I'm looking at this, I'm sure this is outdated, so you can just tell me what the right number is. I'll just ask you, what is our beginning fund balance in 2024? Just what is it? 'Cause the paper I'm looking at here says somewhere around 1.7 million.
I don't actually have it. Yeah, the ordinance, Andy Drew.
But like, what's the actual number at the beginning of 24?
It's an estimate right now.
That's fair.
So in essence, the city is anticipating to start with, by the start of 2024, we're already in 2024, roughly 53.4 million in fund balance across all funds.
Across all funds.
Yes, and we have to keep in mind that what you're seeing there in terms of the appropriation is across all funds.
Okay.
In addition, that's also for 23 and 24 collectively together too. So that's not just a 1 year cost increase. It's really over 2 years, spread over 2 years.
Then I do feel better that that's across all funds, fund balance, not like operating.
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
still a lot though.
And I do just want to remind council that this was the amount that was passed in Agenda Bill 23-1. I'm not gonna guess. There's a bill that we passed in late December that was covered this amount for the CBA. So you can tie these numbers back to that.
Right. Councilor, you have any other questions? This is the first reading, and the second reading is scheduled for January 22nd, 2024 meeting. Seeing none? Councilor Johnson?
Okay, so then, since we have several different fund balances for the various different pots, there's enterprise and other things. Is there any way to break down the 500,000 ish into those different fund balances? Like this much is coming from enterprise, this much is coming from that, or is it better to think of it because we can do it with transfers, to think of it as we've got one big pot and we're gonna do transfers?
No, that's what I tried to do with this. So the general fund, that's the one that we see,
Got it.
that's the
Okay.
general operating. So you can see how much that's affected, about $214,000.
Okay,
And then,
thank you. That
okay.
makes sense.
And just to make sure, Jenna has also provided a forecast as a part of this as well, which has been wrapped into the revenue conversations that you've seen last week. So I believe the last attachment to this agenda bill is the forecast, and that's been incorporated into our revenue forecast moving forward and what we've had in front of you at the Thursday meeting. So.
Any other comments? Right, we have 2 more weeks to digest it, so we will vote on it, review it again on January 22nd. Okay, next item is AB 24-004, ordinance establishing a 0.1% sales tax and use tax within the boundaries of the Snoqualmie Transportation Benefit District for the purpose of financing the costs associated with transportation improvements. This is the first reading of ordinance 1285. Councilor Christensen, would you please read the summary?
Yeah. Chapter 36.73 of the Revised Code of Washington, RCW, authorizes cities to establish a transportation benefit district, TBD, with certain associated revenues, including a voted sales tax of 0.2% and a vehicle license fee of up to $50. The code was amended by Senate Bill 5974, Section 406, to include a 0.1% sales tax that can be imposed by a majority vote of the governing board of the district. This agenda bill seeks to implement the 0.1% TBD sales tax, bringing the total TBD sales tax to the current statutory maximum of 0.3%.
Great. Okay, so we do have our finance director, Drew Boutte, and budget manager, Jenna Walker. They can provide an overview of this sales tax.
All right, so thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Drew Boutte, Finance Director. Thanks for attending the special meeting last week. I think we had a kind of great discussion regarding the financial forecast and what that looks like over the long term for the most part, and how the 5 different kind of revenue options we presented could impact that moving forward. And so consequently, council at that time had narrowed the 5 revenue options down to 2 for consideration today, in addition to maybe some scalable options that we'll bring at a later council date. It's important to keep in mind that council has not been seeking the adoption of all 5 revenue options. So that is critical, and neither the administration as well. The intent was to bring those options to you just for consideration, not for the adoption of all 5. The question that's often asked is, why are we here tonight? And you've heard a little bit about that, specifically, primarily because of inflation during the pandemic. That inflation during the pandemic has certainly hampered our employees over time, which has resulted to a degree in the Teamsters agreement that council adopted last year and as a part of the budget amendment that you've seen. So a lot of these agenda bills actually connect back to each other. In addition to that, we know that the Salish Lodge has been put into trust, and so consequently the city of Snoqualmie is not collecting any sort of sales tax revenue, other general fund revenues, and above and beyond that, even special revenues as well, to support basic city services such as police, fire, street maintenance, and parks maintenance. And then lastly, what I'll just add is we're here because of survey results as well. So council did receive survey relatively recently, and we would note that as a part of that survey, the public or the residents that participated in that survey were primarily in favor of supported the adoption of additional tax increases in order to maintain levels of service. And so as a consequence, the admin made the decision to bring a number of options to council. And through the discussion last week, we have settled, at least at this moment, on the 2 sales tax proposals before you tonight. It's important to keep in mind, and I think this has been reiterated by public comment as well, that sales taxes are not just borne completely by the residents, but are also supported by non-residents who come here to shop, to play, and to recreate within our community itself. And so consequently, the non-residents will also bear some of the responsibility or the burden of this tax moving forward. It's important to note as well that as part of the timing, we're looking for ideally for council to waive the first reading of this ordinance specifically, so that we can return to the Department of Revenue by January the 16th, notify them that we'd like this in place by April the 1st. If we do not put it April the 1st itself, we have estimated that the city of Snoqualmie will potentially lose out on $78,000 of revenue by the time that we can actually get in place, which would be the next quarter, which would be June of this year for the most part. And so having that 3 months is equal to roughly $78,000 for us that we could collect during that time period. In addition to that, just to go over a little bit more of the figures here, we're expected to collect, if a council were to adopt this ordinance, about $320,000 in 2025. That has a pretty important impact on our financial forecast moving forward, which has been demonstrated through the dynamic chart from the previous meeting itself. And Janet, do you mind going on to the next slide? We were also asked the question relatively recently, what is our total sales tax rate in comparison to the other cities as well? And as you'll notice from the chart, Carnation is really the lowest sales tax rate right now. We are second right behind them. If you were to go into an area that's within what's called the RTA or the Regional Transportation Authority area, such as Issaquah, Sammamish, Lake Forest Park, Woodinville, you'll actually see their sales tax rates at 10+%. So as a consequence, Snoqualmie will maintain its competitive tax advantage when it comes to the sales tax rate, even if council were to adopt the 0.1% TBD sales tax here tonight that is under consideration. So with that said, I'd like to turn it back over for any questions.
So I do want to give a chance for public comment real quick. Maybe we can listen to public comment and then we can turn it over for discussion. So first of all, council members, there were 2 people that emailed in, or you have copies there of public comment. And if there's anyone in the chambers that would like to speak public comment to this item or online, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand online or in the chambers. Okay. Okay, Councilor Johnson.
I did get one other email from member of the public that I don't think was included in those two, but I also don't think that went to the city clerk. But I think it went to all the council members, so I'm not sure, should I forward that to city clerk or no? It's a different one. Dated 12/30. Is interesting. Yes, I guess this would have come in before that. Okay, never mind. I withdraw.
This is something different.
This is something before. Never mind. Yep.
Okay, okay. And then who else had their hand up? Councilor Benson, you had your hand up earlier?
Yeah, I was wondering, obviously we don't require passports when you buy something in the city, but we have any kind of idea of what percentage of our retail sales in Snoqualmie are from visitors to Snoqualmie?
So we do not have an estimate right now of that. As you stated, it is very hard to tell, primarily because businesses are not tracking people coming in and out necessarily of where they, for example, come from in order to purchase that sale. And I don't think the Department of Revenue collects that information when they're asking for people to report their sales tax information. So it is a bit of an estimated guesstimate, right? For the most part, if we were to come up with something, we might down the road say assume that all Amazon trucks are, here primarily because of the residents, for example. And so you can kind of do some guesswork like that regarding the hotels, maybe some more of the downtown. You can kind of have maybe a decent sense of what that is, but would be overall a guesstimate, which is why we're kind of reticent to actually present that. What we do have, however, is at least an estimate of what we think the impact on a household residence would be. We're estimating roughly that a resident here spends roughly $30,000 of their income locally within Snoqualmie itself. What kind of goes into that a little bit is the sense of what is the retail leakage rate. And so we have that information generally from earlier the past decade. It would be beneficial for us to update that, however, over time, just to see if it's decreased from 70% or so for the most part. And so consequently, we have to kind of pick something and kind of work with it. And so what we're saying here is a part of our assumptions, we're assuming that the average household spending within the city is roughly $30,000. And so consequently, we expect to generate roughly $30 right now from kind of a resident and a household within Snoqualmie. So that's kind of our best guesstimate right now for council's consideration.
I wonder
Councilor Benson?
I wonder if if we've reached out to businesses and gotten a sense from them of what percentage of their, and again, they'd be guessing too, I would imagine.
Yeah.
To a large part, but there are probably businesses that know, well, certainly during the summer, 30-40% of the people coming into my shop aren't from around here, things like that. That would be helpful information to be able to share with the average
public.
household that's getting hit for another $30 a year. That we're also anticipating that some equivalent percentage is being paid by folks who are just passing through. But to do that study, we would probably spend all of the money that we're going to make. Never mind.
Councilor Cotton?
Yes, to go back and address the letters that we've received as council members from citizens. Our finance director already stipulated that we are not voting in all 5 of the suggested potential revenue options, but we're trying to certainly weigh the pros and cons of the effect on our local residents and try and share that with, some visitors to the area. The other concern that was brought up in those letters too is, of course, the wants and needs part of our city budget. And, I think the pool is always going to be the nemesis of of a want versus a need. And there's quite a few questions about taking money that had been set aside, the $15 million that was set aside for the pool, to, you know, help utilize to balance the budget. I do realize this is, as our discussion, not a sustainable revenue stream. That would be a one-time, you know, fix type of a thing. It might last a few years, but so we're looking for the options that can help sustain, you know, like safety, public works and things through, you know, kind of going forward. Do you have any additional information that you'd like to share with our citizens about that?
Well, I think you put it very eloquently, basically to the public, that we're trying to handle an ongoing revenue problem, not just a one-time revenue issue for the most part. And so, as you're suggesting, if you're to try to plug an ongoing revenue problem with just one-time revenues, it certainly does buy you some time, but you're kicking the can down the road for the most part. So in essence, we're going to be right back at you with the same sort of conversation, just with a more massive gap to have to contend with at that time. And it's going to be much more scary than trying to handle this situation today. In addition to that, what I would suggest to you that the money that we have set aside for the pool itself contravenes, or if we were to say scuttle that for the most part, it contravenes the city's own policies. We've had a long time policy here for the most part that would set aside development revenue, take it out of the general fund so that we're not using that revenue to support our ongoing public safety services and things like that. Consequently, we don't want, for example, this community to have to rely upon that continuous construction in order to maintain our levels of service with police or fire. You know, and in essence, if we were to give up on that policy, you're asking basically requiring more development to take place in order to generate the construction necessary in order to continue the services the community expects and demands for the most part. And so consequently, we don't want to necessarily just throw out that policy because we're struggling with kind of an issue right now with our ongoing expenditures exceeding our revenues. So that was certainly one massive bucket to the community center. And what we were going to fund it with is one-time construction dollars that were coming into the city because of the build out of Snoqualmie Ridge, but then also some projects that were taking place around town, such as the Mount Sinai renovation as well. Secondly, a large second bucket that is being utilized to fund the community center is the real estate excise tax. The state places restrictions on our ability to use those funds. They are restricted for capital purposes. We would be doing something illegal, spending that money to solve a general fund revenue problem, basically. And so that is why we've set aside that money for the community centers, because we've saved that up over time to support that project moving forward. And so if you were to give up on this policy, basically utilizing one-time construction revenues to support basic services across the city, you're going to hurt yourself in the future. If you're going to use real estate excise taxes that are designed specifically for capital purposes to support a general fund revenue problem, you're going to hurt yourself in the future pretty dramatically as well. So that is why consequently, I would recommend that council do not use the money that we've set aside for the community center to solve this general fund sustainability issue. It will not work. It may buy you some time, but you know, we've got choices to make. There are trade-offs. And that is not one that I recommend based on the direction that I've seen from council and this administration when it comes to responsible growth and making sure that the city is financially responsible. Thank you.
Councilor Benson.
Thank you for that explanation. I've heard it half a dozen times and I always learn something new that I didn't fully understand. So really well explained. I appreciate that. I do want to take issue with saying that we've set aside money for the pool. That is a project that we are considering. And it's not necessarily how the money is going to be spent, but absolutely to Mr. Batte's point, spending that money on ongoing expenses would be a horrible mistake. But from the perspective of the citizen, I was one recently, and I didn't totally understand how the accounting worked. And so when you're hearing about, and this is to Councilmember Watten's point, when you're hearing about, well, we got to raise this tax, we got to raise this tax, and we're looking at raising this one too. And we're talking about building a community center that's going to require us to borrow some amount of money in order to make it happen. That's got to raise the hackles of a citizen who's already saying, wait, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. And what I'm hearing from a lot of citizens is, and I don't want the pool. So I am very quickly coming to the determination myself that we need to stop spending money on developing the community center, especially considering the financial situation that we're in. And as far as kicking the can down the road, that is what we do. That's our job, is to kick the can down the road and to kick it a little bit further. The graphs, you made such great graphs, Jana. Those are so awesome. But the crossing of those graphs, that's what we do. We move that point where those graphs cross a little further down the road every year or so. And we got to push it a little bit further. We don't want to make it in a long time, because, you know, we're going to gobble that money up if we've got a gap for a long period of time. But what we do is we push it down the road, and we have to decide as a council, how far do we need to push that vertex down the road? How many years do we need to get to, and what kind of pain do we need to inflict on the people who live here in order to do that? And my feeling is we don't want to kick it way down the road. My feeling is we want to kick it a little bit down the road and then kick it again in a couple of years. But really well explained. Thank you.
Councilor Johnson?
I wonder if we could put up that graph, the one that's manipulatable, if that's a word. Manipulable. So that our citizens can see it when they come back and watch this. They may or may not go back and watch the last one and see it. I mean, I've got kids. I don't go back and watch every single video.
Yeah, so we are
I'll wait
attempting
a
to get
second.
that up right now.
All right,
Mhm.
I'll give you just a second, then I'll have a question about it.
I'd like clarification though. So when we set the capital improvement plan, the CIP, and then we budgeted for it in the biennial budget, we actually appropriated for the community center. Is that correct? 15 million?
That is correct.
Right.
Mhm.
So we've appropriated that money. So it is in our budget. We appropriated it. And also the comment about a lot of people don't want it. We have over 60% in a community survey that do. And so we'll talk a little bit later, because we have a couple open houses coming up and a town hall. So I'm hoping that there will be participation from every council member here that will go and engage our residents to talk about it.
Okay, so, okay. There could be an argument that my question isn't perfectly germane. My argument is that it is, because if we're gonna be raising taxes, we need to have an understanding of these lines and that they make sense. That first uptick still makes no sense to me. Can you run me through why we get this sudden bump of almost $1.5 million from 23 to 24?
Yeah, so we've affectionately called that the shark fin, I think overall.
Yeah, that's.
Yes.
You just run me through the breakdown.
Right, so I'm
it
gonna
still
probably
not
need
making
some
sense to
Janet's
me.
help here a little bit. So that includes, I believe, $300,000 for a comprehensive fee study. Not to actually do it, but the revenue that would be generated from a comprehensive fee study.
Has that occurred yet?
No, that has not occurred yet, but that was budgeted in 2022. We need to get that completed. There's a reason why we've got Tammy right back there, our revenue manager, coming to these meetings from now on so that we can get that going in the right direction and actually come back to you with a conversation on that. The ground emergency medical transport billing as well is another $300,000 that we've anticipated as a part of this too. What that means is, in essence, we have been one of the only really fire departments or districts, for example, that had yet to collect the ground emergency medical transport billing, which is basically payments that come from the healthcare authority with the state. They provide us basically with funding for all the Medicare and Medicaid transports that we conduct here. In some cases, people are unable to fund their own transports, and so I think the state has to pick that up overall. We do have Mike Bailey back there, and so hopefully I'm handling this question as part of it correctly, but we have collected that this year, and we do anticipate collecting that for 2024. Within the budget itself, and what we've budgeted so far is we didn't think we were going to get that money this year. We thought we were going to start a little bit later when it comes to that, but that we'd actually generate that $300,000 in 2024. And then, is there anything else that was? Okay, and then basically the other is an inflationary increase above those two items right there. And that is what in essence results in that increase from 2023 to 2024. The ground emergency medical transport billing, as well as the comprehensive fee study, were anticipated to be new revenues. So that is why you don't just have one linear line basically from the 2023 budget to where you see 2025 right now. Why there's that jump right there is because those were anticipated new revenues.
Counselor Johnson?
Okay, so if we just took the, if we took out the 600,000 from the ground transport and the fee study, then what we would have is an almost straight line for the grain.
Yeah, you should.
Right, okay,
You
so
know,
part of the
adjustments here
correction
and
is the just anticipated fact that it's gonna go up because
Right.
of property taxes, okay. So then the fee study is the 300,000, and how does the study bring in more revenue?
Well, so we have not updated a lot of our fees over time. Consequently, because they haven't increased at the rate of inflation, those fees are no longer providing the kind of support that we need in order to cost recover a lot of the services that we provide. So if you think about your parks activity fees or your building permits and things like that, those have been relatively flat over time. And so consequently, are they paying for the, parks maintenance workers that go out and actually serve the ball fields adequately or not? So we want to take a good look at that in essence, and see if that is really a revenue source that we want to focus on moving into the future. And back in 2022, when council adopted the budget, that was certainly kind of an important aspect to the budget overall for us to conduct within this 2-year period. So that is what we're anticipating. And, I obviously not the research that's been conducted has been relatively exploratory at this point when it comes to those fees. But I know that Tammy back there has at least collected an inventory of every fee that we currently provide for the most part. And certainly we're looking forward to kicking that off and getting that underway.
One more follow-up.
Counselor Johnson again.
Thank you. So then, council, we're looking at increasing sales tax on two things, one of them going to the voters. It sounded like we had some support from that on the council. Not that we voted on it, sounded like we had some decent support on that. We're looking at possibly adding a utility tax because maybe those two sales taxes aren't enough. Maybe BNO, maybe that's popular, maybe it isn't. Property taxes, levy lid lift, maybe, maybe not. That didn't sound as popular either. And we're going to have to probably, if I had to guess, massively raise our enterprise fund rates, which is our utilities rates, to pay for all of that. And we're talking about raising perhaps $300,000 in additional fees for using things like our parks. It's a lot. It's a lot to make all this work.
Counselor Cotton?
2-part question. Well, in response to Councilmember Johnson's response about it's a lot, I think we all feel that, we're all residents here too. That we certainly, I think are trying to go with the sales taxes, which would have the least impact overall on just the residents. I mean, this can at least have some absorption with, or some traction with the visitors as well. Certainly we want to support our businesses and, minimize any, I think impact. I know we're going to get more information on the B&O thing, but, we want to make at least for the next few years, make things conducive to our local businesses staying in business and, staying afloat. So I think that was in agreement to what you were saying. What we were looking at was the two sales taxes would not impact the local residents alone as much. The second part of that question is this, the TBD tax. This is the one with the deadline that we have to vote on it tonight to be able to get it to the Department of Revenue by the 16th.
Yes, that is
So-
basically correct for an April 1st
For the April 1st start.
date and
Yeah,
for it to start collecting.
yeah, okay.
Counselor Watton?
Thank you, Mayor. We've got a choice of whether to waive the second reading tonight, which would mean that we'll be able to capture, if we pass this, 78,000. Otherwise, we're going to lose that opportunity. And while I'm concerned about that, and I'm in support of the sales tax approach, I'm concerned about not giving the public enough time to comment on it, whether they're here tonight. In fact, we actually just first broached this subject on Thursday night. I'd be a little bit cautious to make sure, rather than worry about the 78,000 we could potentially lose, I don't want to lose the trust of the community that we simply just put sales tax or any tax into place and do so without a lot of public consideration as well. And that's my one concern, is I would be in favor of waiting the time, being able to be thoughtful and allow public comment on that before we enact it.
Counselor Christensen?
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment that none of us, and I agree with the council members who have spoken as well, none of us are excited about raising taxes, not a single one. I do think that the best option to go forward is to try to spread out the tax burden on as many folks that are non-residents who are also using these services, that are using the roads to come in here and purchase things that, at some point will be potentially relying on public safety services and things of that nature. And I think that it's important to have them contributing towards it and not just leaving that burden on our residents. I do share concerns about pushing this forward off of first reading. I know that we did have a meeting last week as well that was noticed to the public, but we were not able to get public comment at that one as well. And I do appreciate the feedback that we've received by email and earlier today. I did want to go ahead and comment on a couple other brief things, just because I know that as we were going through and as we got public comment, there were two other capital projects. I think that our finance director did a fantastic job of addressing those. But just as a reminder, the potential expansion of the Snoqualmie Community Center, it is owned by the city, right? It's operated by the Y, but it's used as a designated emergency shelter during regional emergencies. So please don't overlook that. It's also available to members as well as non-members through a free daily drop-in hours for teens, through day passes, other options. It also, again, and I brought it a couple of times, but they have a shower program for some of our most vulnerable members of our community, so they can actually come in and bathe when folks are unhoused. And if you think about it, there's a fair bit of folks in our community who are unhoused, who are still trying to get to jobs, right? They can't afford housing, but they're still trying to go about their daily lives. And it's frustrating to me, and I know that everybody's entitled to their opinion, but it is frustrating to hear it classified as a luxury when they do so much good in the community. So with that, I'm in favor of going forward with the transportation tax, the sales tax on there. I've indicated that before. I do have concerns about going forward. I also have concerns about leaving $78,000 on the table because it is a significant amount of change. That's where I'm at this point. Oh, and then also the Centennial Fields Park, remember we did get like $670 something thousand in other revenue going towards that project as well.
Right. Counselor Benson.
I would also be concerned about pushing this tax vote through too fast without having public comment, and Councilman Holloway and Washington not having it around their necks too. So I don't want this just on us. I think Councilman Watten's point that we need to allow for proper public comment is a good one.
Okay, so is there, do you want to vote on whether to vote this evening and waive it? Or is there consensus pretty much to not? Councilor Watton?
I motion to authorize the first reading pertaining to the adoption of ordinance number 1285, establishing 0.1% sales tax within the boundaries of the Snoqualmie Transportation Benefit District for the purpose of financing the costs associated with transportation improvements as authorized by RCW 36.73.065 and RCW 82.14.0455 and set forth the second reading and adoption at the January 22nd, 2024 City Council meeting.
Second. It was moved by Councilor Watton, second by Councilor Christensen. Any discussion? Councilor Cotton?
Yes, I do agree with Councilmember Christensen, that $78,000 can help with a number of things. It is not a small change. And I do share the concerns of all the other council members about, adequate time for the public to respond on this. Although I think that there's other potential revenue suggestions that they're going to have much more comment on than this particular one. I think we kind of picked this one as the least invasive or traumatic or with a annual response or the annual cost to the average household of about $30 a year. So this would be one that unfortunately I would suggest that we move forward on.
Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, just trying to open up something, but I'll just ask. This tax can only be used on transportation related things, is that correct? This doesn't go toward the more broad general fund.
Right.
Okay.
Well, so there is street maintenance within the general fund itself, which is consequently a maintenance and operation activity, which this money could support.
Okay, and then the only other thing is, I am sure that the answer is yes, but I feel like I should ask, do we need an extra 300,000 some odd per year for those purposes in the operating fund, like, to fix up our streets, et cetera?
So
Just want to make sure that we're raising a tax on something where we actually do need the money, since that's all that it could be spent on. That's my.
I mean, it's we're trying to solve for a general governmental or general fund issue, right? For the most part, certainly there are property taxes, sales taxes that currently support I believe, over $1 million budget in street maintenance annually, if I'm correct. I don't know if you want to take a look at that. And so consequently, $300,000 will certainly allow us to spread out the property tax and sales tax a little bit more evenly across maybe some of the other departments that also contribute to the general fund itself in terms of collections of fees and so on.
Yeah, that was exactly my question. Thank you.
Counselor Christensen?
I was just gonna comment that having it go towards something that we're going to continue to see affected by inflation and have it tied to an ongoing revenue source that is also tied to inflation would probably be beneficial in long-term planning as opposed to having it tied to property taxes, which are subject to the lower of the 1% or inflation, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, well stated.
Any other discussion? So we have the motion on the table to have this as first reading and with a second reading in January 22, so the next council meeting. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, so we have 4 ayes and 1 opposed, Councilor Cotton. So, okay, so this is the first reading. We'll have the second reading at the next council meeting. So, all right, thank you. Okay, is there any Public Safety Committee report?
No report.
Community Development Committee report?
No report.
Okay. Parks and Public Works Committee, AB 24-010, resolution awarding the 2025 to 2030 utility rate study contract. Councilor Benson, would you please read the summary and motion?
Sure. The proposed agenda bill and resolution seeks to authorize the mayor to contract with FCS Group to conduct the City of Snoqualmie's utility rate study for 2025 to 2030. Move to approve resolution, 1676 awarding contract with Financial Consulting Solutions Group for the City of Snoqualmie's utility rate study 2025 to 2030.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved by Councilor Benson and second by Councilor Johnson on awarding the utility rate study contract. Is there any public comment regarding this item? So please raise your hand. Look it online. And also in City Hall. No one's raised their hand. Okay. So Councilor, do you have any questions? We do have Dylan Gamble here to join us that can give you an overview of this, of the utility rate study. Questions? Dylan, you want to come up?
Would you like an overview or a?
Councilor Johnson, please.
Yes, and also just a clarification on the RFP versus RFQ.
Okay.
Issue.
Which one would you like first? I can go for the
Let's
overview.
do the overview first.
Okay. The quick way of explaining the process here is we conducted the 2024 fiscal health review. That looked at the state of our utilities and it took a look at what we have right now in terms of costs and took a look at what we're going to spend in 2024. And we tried to adjust the rates in a more, I wouldn't say quick, but it's just using the same modeling and forecasting systems that we used in the original study from 2018, I believe, or 2020, I'm sorry. So we tweaked those models in order to come up with the terms and numbers that we used to update that ordinance back in December of 2023. This utility rate study will actually do a much more in-depth review in terms of time and GFCs, which are development fees, essentially, and also look at the capital goals and objectives that we have for all of our utilities and what we need to maintain those systems. It will also take into consideration maintenance and operations costs as we have identified them in our budget. And essentially it will try to help us forecast the revenue needs for the utilities and identify how we will pay for them. It will give us essentially a 3 alternative review of each of the utilities and each of the taxes. And that will allow council to make a decision on how best to capture that revenue. So there are a lot of options, as we kind of maybe hinted at in the original, or I'm sorry, the original, in the 2024 fiscal health review. But there will be a lot more dials, so to speak, to consider, especially as we have different revenue sources in terms of water mains and multifamily and GFC rates that we'll want to consider, and council will want to consider how we pay for our future project capital goals in the utilities. So this agenda bill and contract is the consultant who will do the work identifying those modeling, that modeling architecture that helps us get there, and participate in the meetings to show kind of what the ramifications of each of the decisions, revenue wise and cost wise, in terms of capital. So that's the brief of it, and I will leave it to our legal department to go over RFP clarifications, if that's okay.
That's fine. Mayor?
Yes, city attorney, Manhattan.
So I understand there was at least some question raised in the committee meeting about the process that was used to select the consultant for this particular agenda bill. So the distinction between an RFP and an RFQ, sometimes people, I think, put too much emphasis on that distinction. The concept of an RFQ is really something that derives from the state law definition of professional services. If you're procuring what's called professional services, which, contrary to the name, is very limited. It's engineering, it's architecture, it's surveying, and landscape architecture. If you're doing one of those four things, you have to follow the RFQ or the qualifications-based selection process. This doesn't fall within any of those categories of services. This is kind of financial consulting, economic consulting, financial advice. That's just considered personal services. There's no state mandated solicitation or selection criteria or process that the city has to follow for these types of personal services. You could use any style of selection process you wanted, as long as you were, obtaining some sort of competitive, if you will, selection process. So here, whether you call it an RFP or you call it an RFQ doesn't really matter. But here, I think the process that was used, they advertised for an RFP for a utility rate study. They got a couple of responses, and the city staff, as I understand it, scored those responses based on some criteria that they felt were most important. And they chose the one that seemed to best check all the boxes, provide the best service, the best work product that the city was looking for. That's totally consistent with what other cities would do in this exact situation. And so whether you call it an RFP or an RFQ doesn't really matter, but I think it's probably best described as an RFP.
Councilor Christensen, did you had your hand up earlier?
Yeah, thank you. So I had a question just in terms of the alternative rate design and the additional meetings and presentation. And this may be an unfair question to ask, but as I was looking through the documents, it said that the most recent study was completed in 2020 and it had 10 council and committee meetings. And it said, based on the input received from our follow-up questions, an additional 5 meetings will be budgeted as part of the contingency. So I just wanted to make sure. So is it the 15 that's currently budgeted in terms of the $128,000 already?
I see.
Or would there be an additional cost on top of that, to the extent that, especially as we're going through and trying to figure out how we want to allocate the additional costs? Because I know that is a concern that council has raised in connection with the last one amongst multifamily and other ways. And I know that it gets much more complicated than that. I just want to make sure that the all-in is going to be this amount, since it's already more than what we'd planned.
I see. The way to think about this is that we pay for what we use.
Mhm.
We modeled 5 with 5 contingencies as part of the contract, but if we don't use the other 5, we don't pay for them. They will, as we receive the invoices, that's part of the confirmation for us, is to make sure that we're only paying for what we use for this contract. So there's not a lot of other examples in this where we have contingency like that. We would get into changing the scope pretty substantially for anything else, but the meetings was an example of where staff in our initial conversations with FCS Group were trying to whittle down the price. And in review of the 2010 meetings, felt it was in our best interest to leave 5 in contingency and 5 as the assumed amount. We can obviously shrink that and escalate it as needed. I wouldn't suggest escalating it per se, but that's kind of what I was comfortable with when we were negotiating that, and that's what I brought forward. But if we scaled it back, it would just be a matter of not doing those meetings.
To be clear, that is not my suggestion.
And yeah, that's-
Okay, thank you.
and I don't know the exact number. I'd have to look. They have a fee per the individuals that they bring, and so if we request them to bring both of their staff, they have a certain rate. They charge by the rate as they're here. So I could estimate that if we get there, especially.
Thank you.
Any more discussion, questions? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, the ayes have it and the agenda bill is approved. Thank you. Next item for F&A, the AB 23-138 recommendation for lodging taxes 2024 allocation. We do have, so Mayor Pro Tem Holloway actually was in this meeting. I'm not sure there was another council meeting as part of that. Nicole's online. Okay, so Councilor Christensen, would you please read in the summary and motion?
The Lodging Tax Fund Advisory Committee, LTAC, is responsible for requesting, receiving, and evaluating applications requesting funds for tourism-related programs in Snoqualmie, determining eligibility of the applicants, and providing a recommendation of hotel motel tax allocations to the City Council. Move to approve Lodging Tax Advisory Committee 2024 funding recommendations.
Second?
Moved by Councilor Christensen and second by Councilor Watton to approve the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommendations. And I believe we have Nicole Wiebe online. Maybe Nicole, if you can give us maybe an overview of this, of the meeting and your recommendations.
Certainly. We received 13 applications last fall. Although we didn't know that we received one of them, it got stuck in a spam filter. So we allocated the $175,000 for the 12 applications, brought it to council in December. On the day that we were bringing it to council, we realized we were notified that we had this other application. So we met last week, or the LTAC Commission met last week. They reviewed all 13 applications, made some changes to the allocations, and the application that had got stuck in the spam filter, which was the Meadowbrook Farm, they did receive funding. All of the allocations, the 2 groups that didn't receive any funding the first time also didn't receive funding the second time. That analysis, that those recommendations that stayed the same, but we were able to fund the Meadowbrook Farm.
Thank you. I don't believe I did public comment on this. So is there any public comment regarding this item? See anyone online or in the city chambers? Okay,
Point of information,
Councilor Watton?
those were suggestions from the LTAC committee to the council, correct? Not funding allocations already made.
That's correct. That's correct. So yeah, we would, we're suggesting that you approve the work that they've been done, and then the money will be allocated.
Right, that's correct. Okay.
Thank
Council, have any questions? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That passes unanimously and the funding recommendations is approved.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. AB 24-007, submission of a ballot proposition to the qualified electors of the city at an election to be held on August 6, 2024, regarding a 0.1% public safety sales tax. Pastor Christensen, would you please read the summary and just the summary?
Sure. Chapter 82.14.450 of the revised Code of Washington, RCW, authorizes cities to impose a sales tax of up to 0.1% for public safety with voter approval. Counties may also impose a public safety sales tax under the same statute, up to a maximum of 0.3%. And the combined city-county sales tax rate for public safety may not exceed 0.3%. However, King County does not currently does not impose a public safety sales tax. Resolution 1677 calls for an election and certifies a proposition for submission to the King County Director of Elections to be placed on the ballot for the August 6, 2024 primary election. Would you like me to continue? Or is that?
That's probably good.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any public comment regarding this item? So please raise your hand. Regarding public safety potential sales tax. Not seeing anyone online or in the council chambers. Okay. We do have our finance director, Drew Boutte. Would you like to provide an overview of that?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. And once again, good evening, council. It's very similar to the 0.1% TBD sales tax in front of you. The only some major differences, the previous agenda bill that you had in front of you is councilmatic, which means council can vote to approve it. This one would be a proposition that we would then send to the voters. Consequently, if you were to approve this resolution, we would send King County this resolution. And then ideally, they'll have this on the ballot on August the 6th, 2024 for the voters to approve or reject. So with that said, an important aspect to this is the fact that King County will collect 15% of this revenue, which means consequently the city of Snoqualmie would receive approximately in 2025, $226,000. And then for 2026 to $279,000 and escalating from there. And so consequently, we had a conversation around tax rates and how we compare against other cities. If the voters were to approve this along with the TBD transportation sales tax, if council were to approve that, the city of Snoqualmie would then have a 9.1% total sales tax rate, which is still less than the cities within the RTA, such as Issaquah, which is where a lot of people from Snoqualmie shop. Lake Forest Park, Woodinville, Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, a lot of cities within generally the RTA or the Sound Transit District would continue to pay a higher sales tax rate than you would here in Snoqualmie. So in essence, this is very similar to the discussion that we had. We do have the dynamic chart still available if you want to compare both options or look at both options collectively together, the public safety sales tax as well as the TBD sales tax as well. And I think we've heard from a lot of people that non-residents, even though we don't have exactly a number to work with, would bear at least some of the responsibility for this tax moving forward. So thank you and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Counselor, do you have any questions or discussion? Counselor Johnson.
Yeah, if you could go ahead and put up the chart, that'd be cool. While they're pulling that up, just a reminder that the assumption for the revenue does include $300,000 approximately in new revenue that we budgeted for, but have not yet approved. So that's already there, whether we did any new taxes or not in the green line, if I'm remembering correctly.
That is correct.
Okay. So then if we turn this one and the TBD into a yes, that seems like the most likely scenario for what we're hoping for based on our prior conversations, even though we haven't voted on it. So if this is all true, then they cross over. What's the date that they cross over? I just can't quite read off of that.
That reads to me 2028.
Okay. Oh, and one other thing is also remember from a prior discussion that the orange line does not include some upcoming contracts, negotiations that most likely it's going to make the orange line become more steeper if I were to guess.
Right. So that includes the Snoqualmie Police Association, which represents our police officers and sergeants. And then after that, we'll include the IAFF, which represents our firefighters.
So this is going to cross,
as well as a couple.
They're going to cross much earlier, probably.
Depending on how those negotiations go with those two unions and what council happens to approve and what we can reach, there is a possibility that, certainly expenditures will increase.
Yeah. Thank you.
As well as the M&P.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
That'd be soon. Counselor Christensen?
That was going to comment on M&P as well. On this, I'm of the same opinion as before. I think that we will need to go ahead and increase taxes clearly. It's best to do it and spread out the burden again for the folks who are receiving the benefit of driving on the roads and being able to utilize public safety services as well. For something like this, similar to the last one, unless there's a necessary deadline where we have to get it done now as opposed to in 2 weeks. My own personal preference would be to wait until we have our other council members on here so that it's full support of the council going forward. But I don't know if it would be detrimental to getting this on the ballot and the other things that need to move forward in the interim.
So we need to have this resolution to King County by May the 3rd. And it's important to keep in mind, this is a resolution and not an ordinance, so probably require a different motion than the one that you currently see within your packet.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Vincent? Counselor Vincent?
Have we looking at the budget, have we factored in the potential that the other unions that we're negotiating with would get something similar to what the Teamsters got? Is that reflected in our current budget? Something similar to that to give us maybe close to, I don't know, what are the numbers for police and fire in the budget anticipate as that document stands right now? I think it was that document in the previous bill in, I want to say item 7.
So I believe, is that the Teamsters CBA? Or, well, so this one, which is, so this agenda bill in front of you is 007, the public safety sales tax one.
Okay.
Just to go back to the the period of 2022 in which council adopted the 23-24 budget. The city did include a number of COLA increases, but not as significant as what Teamsters had received for 2023. Every employee group was in alignment with what we had estimated at that time for Teamsters. And that is what council adopted at that time. So indeed, likely, if anything is greater than roughly that 3 to 4% that was incorporated at that time, we will probably be coming back with a budget amendment and seeking additional appropriation to manage anything like that.
And is that going to affect these lines?
Yes,
I assume it will.
it will. It will certainly impact the orange one.
So then that would probably also impact the 2028 part of this as well.
Right, so it could potentially push that date of overlap over to 2027 and even sooner, potentially, depending on what happens. But I don't want to presuppose or presage anything that might happen during the negotiation process. That is still in the works right now. And we certainly will turn over any sort of stone that we possibly can.
I mean, I mean, we don't know what those negotiations are going to end up. I don't think they're going to say, oh, just leave the pay the way it is. That seems less than likely. I feel like it's more likely it's going to be more like whatever, something in the neighborhood of what unions are getting. So, okay, so then that would push the crossing closer than
Yes.
2028. Okay.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, so we will plan to have us review it again at the next meeting on January 22nd. Oh, Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, so then the amount that's currently budgeted just for kind of a similar reason I brought up about streets last time, for this could be for both police and fire, is that correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so police and fire.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so combine those are like 9 million. So this is less than 9 million. 9 or 10.
But it would be helpful.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Right.
Okay, great. We will address it again in January 22nd at the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Next item is 2024 legislative priorities. These are in draft. And legislative session started today. And it's a 60-day session. And so we've had these in draft since August, and we actually showed these to the legislators when we did the ribbon cutting for the Parkway. And I know that public safety, you reviewed the public safety items, at your meeting, probably last month. Do we have, Council, do you have any discussion around these? Is there anything we should add? Or changes? Councilor Christensen?
I don't really want to kick the can further down the road, but I do hesitate a little bit to have the conversation tonight when our mayor pro tem and one of the other council members isn't here. And I don't like pushing it down, and I know that we would have, I think we have a pretty busy calendar going forward on the 22nd, but it would just be my hesitation to have a conversation without the full council.
So at FNA, we did request to have this added for tonight, because when we get to it January 22nd, you already have 22 days out of 60 already completed at legislative session. So, and this has been on the FNA agenda since August. So is that a motion?
I guess I'd like to hear from my other council members. I'm happy to have the discussion. I feel like it may not be complete without the other two council members present.
Councilor Benson?
I totally respect what Councilmember Krista Watton Johnson is saying, but we've been talking about these for a while, and I think we all agree that these are priorities at this point. And are you thinking that there might be things added to it, or?
Mayor, is it already first one?
Yes, Councilor Christensen.
Thank you. So I know that we've spoken about it in public safety, the three of us, but we haven't had a chance to involve Councilmember Cotton and then just, I have not heard personally the feedback from Councilmembers Washington or Holloway. And so I just don't know whether they're supportive in these or not. And since they weren't on public safety, they wouldn't have necessarily had the same conversation we did or been able to receive the updates from Chief Lynch. So those are my hesitations.
Councilor Watton?
My concern is this, it is a short session. I think it's important that we put these, memorialize these, but also that we had the opportunity to hear from Representative Callan and Representative Ramos, and it's going to be very tough to get additional funding for things like the first one, the community center expansion. And I'm just a little bit concerned about, for me, it's public safety and affordable housing are things that we might want to reprioritize. It would be in my eyes that those things are probably more approachable, but they're ongoing. It's not going to happen necessarily in this session. And I do have serious concerns about property tax cap increase. I'm just very sensitive to the fact that our tax base is heavily dependent on property tax, and I'm not sure that's the right answer. I've got some other ones, but we're not going to discuss those tonight. And it happens to do is narrow the gap between us and Issaquah on sales tax.
Councilor Benson?
I was just trying to understand what are you in favor of further discussion or?
Yes.
Or okay, all right. Well,
Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, I think the fact that there's these public safety items that we haven't heard from two of the council members that aren't here tonight. I'm also in favor of pushing it back, even though I know it's a short session. So it pains me to do that. One possibility that I just throw out there was if we just took off the public safety stuff for now and added it later, then we could get the other ones in early. But council doesn't want to do that. I respect that too. That's not necessarily an official motion. If someone wants to agree to that, they can make the motion. If not, we'll let it die.
Let's see, no motion.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's fine.
any other comments? So do we leave it as is? Councilor Cotton?
Well, I have to agree with Councilmember Watton as far as the prioritizing the things that are important and ongoing. I guess my question as the new council member is, are we looking at prioritizing things that we're going to present to our legislature, you know, as far as the things that we want to stress for our city? And you're looking at, you know, us prioritizing this list at this current time?
Right, so this list actually was probably taken from our 2023 approved legislative priorities. And, or it also came off of like AWSC, especially the public safety portions that they are, you know, talk with legislatures about as representations for all cities. And so, you know, this is the list we have, and there's others that we could add, such as, you know, additional funding for mental health, because that is where we've gotten funding for that. Our mental health behavioralist for the last 2 years. It'd be great to have a third year, for instance, to add that on there. But this is basically from our previous priorities. Councilor Christensen.
So when we've talked about our legislative priorities in the past, there was kind of discussion about whether we wanted the generic things that would help not only the folks in our community, but that would help regionally as well. And part of the reason, and I know part of the discussions that were kind of swirling around, I think the last 2 years as we did the legislative priorities, is that it can be helpful if you're going for funding to have that request that's just specific to your city to be at the top, because they'll be receiving a number of different legislative priorities from different cities all over this, all over, right? And so if you're asking for one thing that is city specific, it can be helpful to have that front and center. And that was the advice that was presented from our last mayor pro tem. And so I think that had to do with some of the ordering as well, but there were discussions then about like, how do you rank and how do you value the other priorities that we have, because there are. And at one point, I think 2 years ago, maybe we'd had them numbered and we didn't like how that worked either, because it's difficult, right? Anyway, for better or for worse, that was my recollection of the last few times that we talked about it. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Thank you.
So one item that's not on there is parkway funding, and we had that like #1 for quite a few years, and we got the funding. So as Councilor Christensen said, if you keep it front and center, then they know that that's important. And so next year is the big budget year. And so whether we get something this year, most likely not, but next year we have a possibility we could. Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, for continuity, I do like the order so that they can see that we're always asking for the money to make this community center happen. You know, that's the first thing they see. And if they just go, well, not this time, because as they indicated, it's not going to be in this session, but perhaps the next time they go, oh yeah, that's right, this is really important to them. There is one thing up here that I thought we had in the past, and maybe I'm just misremembering, was the continued progress on Highway 18 and its expansion. That I think that's really important to, especially the people who work here. I mean, certainly our citizens too, but a lot of people who work here that commute. I mean, I get impacted almost every day at the daycare. A lot of those workers come over Highway 18, and then it's like, oh wait, I'm gonna have to be a couple hours late to work because their workers can't get here. So that's one thing that I think we might want to continue to add on there until it's done.
Right.
The Parkway, there is the conversation about getting that transferred to the state. I don't know if we want that to be on here because that's a negotiation issue that's ongoing. I don't know what the politics are of that. But for the continued funding until 18 is done, I think that should probably still be on here somewhere.
Right. So it could be ensure preservation of prior legislative appropriations funding for the phase 2 of State Route 18 expansion.
Yeah.
Right. So we can add that.
Excellent.
Councilor Cotton?
You had mentioned briefly, so is our mental health professional that's helping in the emergency situations, is that ongoing funding that we have to get from the legislature for that position?
Either that or then we have to start budgeting for it. So far we've received 2 years of grants
So is this something that we should have on this list?
Right, so we can add that as well, funding for the mental health specialists. We can add that.
Thank you.
Pastor Watton?
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with Councilmember Johnson that we need to emphasize SR 18. Last year, if you recall, we almost lost the funding that had been set aside for SR 18. Now the bigger concern is it is a huge project, and doing it in one chunk means there are going to be fewer contractors available, even willing to bid on the project. And so Issaquah Mayor Pauley has put forth this idea that it be broken down in several stages to allow more competition and perhaps local employers in being able to bid for that work without delaying the total time it's going to take. And the reality is that segment is going to take 5 to 5.5 years to complete. And thank goodness right now it's on track, but that is changing quickly because costs are going up on every state highway program far beyond what was budgeted. And it is a concern. So, that may even take precedence in our order of what we have there. So I appreciate the comments. It should certainly be towards the top of that list.
Okay. I know they do have some new projections of how much it's going to cost, so higher than the 659 million. Okay, so if we keep the items that are on there, is that what we want to do? And then add the transportation preservation, legislative appropriations, and mental health specialist. Does that work? Okay. Give your hand up.
No, I was scratching my lip.
Okay.
Thank you for noticing.
Okay. So any other comments, or you want to vote on this, or? Councilor Johnson?
I think that since we were, I thought that I heard a consensus, we were going to wait to actually vote on it. I guess if Mayor thinks that that we need a vote on adding those two things, I'm fine with that, but not for the approval of the whole thing.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve those two items?
You gonna make a motion, man?
Okay, well then, move to add them to the lists, and to be explicit, that doesn't mean that we're voting to actually approve them to be forwarded.
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. So moved by Councilor Johnson, seconded by Councilor Benson to add preservation of funding for Phase 2 State Route 18 and funding for mental health specialist to the list. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, so it passes, and so we will take it up again on January 22nd. Okay. Right. Okay.
I was asking whether council would want to put it on the consent agenda such that if the other two council members have concerns, they can ask that it be removed, but otherwise we don't have to relitigate.
Okay.
They're fine with that.
That sound fine?
Does that seem fine?
Okay, so add to the consent agenda. Sounds good. Great, thank you. All right, next item is Mayor's report. So a couple things coming up. Snoqualmie Valley Government Association meeting is January 24th in Carnation. And so I hope that council will consider attending this, provide you a chance to meet the other Snoqualmie Valley mayors and council members. And there's several new mayor and several new elected council members throughout the valley. I was elected to the Sound City Association's board representing the Snoqualmie Valley, and I'll be serving a 2-year term. So that'll start actually this month. Community Center, we have an open house, 2 open houses on January 18th and also the 31st from 5 to 7 p.m. at the YMCA. And then we also have a town hall that's going to be planned for a date to be determined, most likely later February 28th. Okay, so please plan to attend one or all. So you can talk with residents and see what, you know, what it looks like. There's be all types of displays and you can talk about different programming that they're gonna be doing. There's a whole list of things that you can walk around and see. So finally, winter weather is coming and our crews are standing by to serve the city. So hopefully we won't get a lot of snow, but if we do, they will be out there. That's what I have. Moving on to commission committee liaison reports. Probably are not a lot right now. Councilor Watton?
Thank you, Mayor. There's one that I want to highlight, and that was from December 7th. I serve as one of 8 members across King County on the Regional Law, Safety, and Justice Committee. And we talked about the juvenile detention center closure that was been proposed by the King County administrator or King County executive. And I think that in light of what's happened here locally, we're rather sensitive to the need to make sure that kids have a place to be. The center was opened in February of 2020 to the tune of $242 million. It was actually passed by the voters in 2012. The plan from the county executive is that some 46 residents that are currently in, this is according to the Seattle Times, would be placed in community homes with locking doors. It is a concern not only to our residents, it's a concern to King County Superior Court presiding judge Oishi, to the King County Undersheriff Jesse Anderson, and to the King County prosecutor as well. In light of the sensitivity for our community is something that we need to have on our radar. On November 21st, there were 46 youth held in juvenile detention, including 12 charged as adults under state law, 5 were held for murder, and 15 for armed robbery. We will continue to follow this through the Regional Law, Safety, and Justice Committee. So that's something that I want to make sure that you're aware of. January 3rd, I held a housing chat, and Councilmember Christensen, Mayor Ross were present, as well as North Bend City Administrator Dave Miller. We do this once a month and it's open to the public. And then finally today we had the Meadowbrook Farm Preservation Board talking about elk safety signs and how to corral beavers from making more dams and causing flooding. So tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. CLTC. So that's pretty much all from me.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other commission or committee reports? No? Councilor Christensen?
I don't have too much to add. I will be back on the King Conservation District again this year. I was appointed through the SCA.
Great. Are you also doing PIC?
Yeah. Was part of.
Okay, you send your name in. Okay, thank you. Okay, City Administrator Chambliss, would you like to give us a quick overview on the reports?
Just a couple highlights out of the reports in there. In December, our communications division went viral with their photograph of the falls. Over 1 million hits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Now we just need the tourist dollars to come with that bump, right?
over 1 million hits.
Ad
on a
revenue.
photograph of the fall. of the
Ad
falls.
revenue.
Yes.
So, I'm probably not saying that right, but I think it.
Viral
said
the
it right.
term.
So anyway, our annual building permit numbers were 548 this year. There's a comprehensive report from our new finance director, and also I'd like to point you towards, there's actually metrics in here. They processed 4,000, almost 4,000, well, a little more than 4,600 utility payments last month. That is a ton of work, and they do that every month. So fire, police, public works, they're all in there. I encourage you to look at it and read it at your leisure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Council, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I will entertain, oh, Councilor Johnson.
One quick thing was, yeah, if you compare the 2 years from 2023 and 2022 for the police report, things are looking a lot better. So that's good.
So why don't you expand on that? Slut. Crime is
Oh,
down.
Yeah, crime is down. The
Yeah.
police are doing a great job.
Crime is down. That's good. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
There you go. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Councilor Johnson, second by Councilor Christensen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? We are adjourned.
Yay.
9:28. Thank you.